Good afternoon, welcome back. Thank you everyone for sticking around online and in person. I'm very pleased to welcome Diana FitzGerald from the TDSB, who's going to talk to us about, well, jump in action, I guess.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Diana FitzGerald. I am a principal at the Toronto District School Board. I'm currently in a K-5 school up in North York. And just to give you a little bit of idea of who is in my school, we have a partnership with a refugee shelter. So about a third of our students are refugees from all over the world. So you can probably infer from that that there are various skill levels, lots of gaps, lots of kids coming and going. And we'll talk a little bit about how JUMP is helping those students. And then the other 2/3 of our population is also very diverse, but generally we're born in Canada. So we have lots of languages in our school, lots of diversity, quite diverse socioeconomic backgrounds as well. It's a really interesting little place. Before I was at my current school, I spent most of my time in model schools for inner city, primarily in Regent Park and also in St. Jamestown. So I've got lots of experience in a wide range of schools, and I've seen JUMP in action in most of those schools, as well as a school also in Rosedale too. So it's really interesting to see how JUMP works in all of these different contexts, and we'll talk a little bit about that afterwards. I'm super excited to be here because I am the biggest fangirl of JUMP Math. I used it myself in classrooms for almost 10 years, and thank you, John, for allowing me to come and geek out about JUMP Math today. So I thought I would start a little bit about talking to you about my own personal journey through learning math, because it is definitely not a unique experience. And I was actually quite surprised this morning to hear from John that his experience was quite similar to mine as well. And it's not something that mathematicians themselves go through. And so I started in school, obviously elementary, and I struggled all the way through high school. I was in a gifted program in high school, so presumably bright enough to be. Am I okay here? Okay. And I struggled very, very hard. And in grade 12, I was taking my maths, and my grade 12 math teacher pulled me aside in June, and she said, "Diana, math is not for you. I don't think you should take another math. I suggest you worry about the subjects that are your strengths. Don't do another one. And by the way, you failed." So that was my experience in grade 12 math. But being the person that I am, I said, oh, okay, I don't generally do what people tell me to do, so I took some more maths in grade 13. And I was very fortunate, however, to have a good family friend who was a gifted math teacher, and he tutored me weekly. But really the biggest gift that he gave me was around confidence. It wasn't so much the math itself, but it was yeah, you can do this. You are capable and competent. You can do this math. And he left a very long impact for me. So I had it in my head too. The reason why I did maths in grade 13, I really wanted to go to business school and university. And thanks to Doug, my gifted math tutor, he gave me the skills that I needed to do to be able to get through those math courses in grade 13, scraped by, managed to get into business school, which was at the time my dream. And I actually specialized in math in business, strangely enough, because I began to flourish in those courses myself. And it was all thanks to Doug and his confidence building for me. I actually specialized in a course program called Marketing Informatics, which is looking at consumer data in order to influence sales, understanding buying patterns. And that was really groundbreaking at the time, about 25 years ago. It wasn't something that really businesses were using quite yet. I loved that I could use data to understand how marketing worked. I loved that. It was kind of getting beyond well, you know, data or marketing is about psychology. Well, yes, it is, but it's also about understanding and how to influence sales. In my stats courses that I had to take for my, my program, I started to open up and have some aha moments about math myself. And I started to see patterns, and I started to see sort of like the magic of how numbers work with each other. And this was not an experience that I'd had previous to this. And this story is definitely not a unique story, as I mentioned before. We all have math phobia, and I'm sure that many of you in this room, very accomplished math people, have had some similar experience and have come to math maybe later in life. And JUMP really was a turning factor for me as well. I really have reflected a lot on that teacher's advice to me in grade 12. And it also drives me and allowed me to become the teacher that I am today, because I think it's absolutely detrimental to tell a student, don't do math, especially a female student, as we know that math tends to favor male students. And then I think about a little bit too about the students that live within the margins of our education system, those that are typically not programmed for, such as students with special education needs, English language learners, racialized students. Giving advice to those kinds of kids, such as mine, would be lifelong damaging. This legacy is actually quite long-standing. It still happens today, sadly enough. And that's why I think JUMP is, as John says, a great equalizer, because it can really begin to eliminate some of those barriers. Oops. My apologies. Okay. It seems to be skipping. Did it? Okay. There we go. There we go. Okay. We also have been hearing a little bit this morning about some of those interventions that the Ministry of Education has put into place, such as a changed curriculum, and also this mandatory testing that new teachers need to take in order to get their accreditation and their license to teach. This math phobia, however, I think it goes beyond some of that as well, because those teachers carry that fear that they have, that I had, into the classroom with them. And you know that when you're in a teachers college class, the teachers are terrified as well. So I think a lot about my students. I think a lot about now my teachers as well, and how do we prepare teachers? How do we remove this phobia? How do we get rid of this anxiety so that we can undo some of this legacy? Just to jump back to my story, after a couple years of teaching math and feeling quite terrified about teaching even grade 4 math, I was looking at grade 5 and grade 6 and thinking, I can't do that, even though I'd had quite a bit of success in university myself. I was quite nervous about going on to lead other students through learning math. This, as I mentioned, is a really common sentiment among teachers. And then it wasn't until I jumped into a school that was using the JUMP program that I started to gain a lot of confidence for myself. It's the program, as I was working through the program with my students, I myself was learning a ton. And I was closing a lot of the gaps that I'd missed in elementary school and in high school as well. And I became really excited about teaching math because it was not hard. Like, it was not hard. And I thought a lot too about, this is improving my own content knowledge. And I really believe that for us to be competent teachers and to teach the kids, we need to make sure that we have deep content knowledge ourselves. We can talk about pedagogy, but the content knowledge is really important. Sorry, apologies, everybody.
Host disabled person screen sharing, so you got to make me a co-host. GSA version. I told it. My team would never forget to do this, but
because they're not screen sharing.
yeah, I got a screen share here. It's like so.
There, is it up? Ah, perfect, perfect, perfect. So apologies, I think, to everybody online. The screen, my PowerPoint was not being shared, but it is now. So through the JUMP program, I was increasing my own content knowledge. I find that the teachers who are teaching math, they have the same gaps that the students do as well, because they'd missed out on that early learning. Just coming back to this idea of pedagogy, we talk about multiple ways all the time, different ways to teach math to our students. Do we do it through group work? Do we do it through manipulatives? Do we do it through paper and pencil tasks? Do we do it through experiential learning? And we can talk about pedagogy till the cows come home. However, if we as teachers don't have deep content knowledge, we are not going to be able to effectively use pedagogy as a tool to be able to deliver that learning to our students so that they really get it. So JUMP is really very critical to teachers in the classroom for themselves to be able to build their own content knowledge, as well as partner it with the pedagogy as well. One of the most common comments that I hear from students is, JUMP math is so easy. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, that's good. That's what I would like to hear. I don't want to hear that math is hard. And John mentioned that this morning too. Why does math need to be hard? It doesn't need to be. I think being hard scares off our students. So my teachers also say the same thing to me. They say, Diana, you know, this JUMP math, it's way too easy for our kids. Our kids need harder things to work from. And I'm like, okay, I send it back to my teacher and I say, well, do they understand it? And they say yes. Do they feel confident? They say yes. Can they answer the questions? Yes. Can they talk to you about what they've learned? And they say yes. And I said, so then we've accomplished what we need to accomplish without it being difficult. So I think we need to start undoing this idea that math needs to be hard, because that in itself is a turnoff. And so how does JUMP do this? And I know this was talked a little bit about this morning, but from a teacher point of view, JUMP is incredibly accessible to all students. And as I mentioned, you know, I've worked in a variety of schools. We have kids coming in and out of school from various places around the world with lots of gaps in their learning, often from war-torn countries. So they've missed a good chunks of school, or even just from different countries where schooling is a little bit different. And so we talked about the chunking of the skills and the content. The chunking is small, it's brilliant, it feeds off of each other. It is so well chunked that no concept is too big to understand. It just goes nice, it's a very beautiful flow. We talk a lot about spiraling skills and content too. So spiraling, if you don't know, is revisiting the same skills over and over again through the year. Many other programs say, okay, term one, you're going to learn, I don't know, polygons. And then you'll say goodbye to polygons for the rest of the year, and then you'll come back to it again somewhere a second time, and for a very discrete amount of time. JUMP, however, will spiral these concepts all the way through the year, embedded in various ways through various topics. And so you don't just revisit once or twice, you're revisiting the similar skills all the way through the year. That way the students have multiple times where they can work at and practice and hone those skills. It's super well scaffolded. As John mentioned, as Tracy mentioned as well, scaffolding is super important, but connected to that, there are a few assumptions made about what you already should know in math. So in other programs, you finish grade 3 math, we assume you know all the grade 3 math, and we're going to jump into grade 4 math. Jump scaffolds it in a way that your students will fill in a bunch of gaps from the previous year. It'll say, well, you should know X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to do this again with you right now, just to make sure that we're covering those basics. And we're going to do that a few times, and then we're going to jump into the new skill. So it's so beautifully scaffolded, and it doesn't make those assumptions about what you should know, that any student can jump in at any point into the program, anywhere along their education, elementary educational career, that they can start to pick up and join the program. And then as mentioned too, I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same presentation over again. It's very low language. For me, on the ground, working with students who are learning English, it is very unfair to expect students to have to understand English in order to be able to do the math. It's not fair. You're setting our students up for failure to do that. And so as you saw some of the pictures this morning, there's very little language in the workbooks so that students can work quite independently with the practice. It's experiential, it's hands-on. The workbook, what I always talking to my staff about with the workbook is, don't touch the workbook until later. The magic is in the teacher's manual. And all of those hands-on experience are in the teacher's manual. Spend a ton of time with kids, sitting around on the carpet with whiteboards, manipulatives, black line masters, like hundreds charts and things like that, where the kids are moving and playing and solving puzzles and picking up the skills that way. It is not paper and pencil, and that's what's brilliant about it. And I just find that Jump is gentle, like it's a gentle program. So it doesn't feel like it's ever forced. The kids love it because it's gentle. I don't have a better word to describe it. And then the last piece is, I don't know of any other programs that are evidence-based and based on cognitive science. And to me, this is a big selling point for Jump. Why are we teaching, why are we using programs that have no research behind them? We don't know if they work or they don't. And I think that's really dangerous. And there are so many programs that we use as educators, we don't know if they're working or not. And there's no evidence to say that they are. Why are we wasting our time and our money on these programs? So it's evidence-based, it's based on cognitive science. I mean, it's tons of research behind it, ongoing research behind it. And that, for me, trying to talk to my teachers about Jump in their classes, this is a big selling point for them too, because we're starting to become a little bit more data-focused and data-driven in our decision-making in school, which is amazing. And I just wanted to talk a little bit too about some of the challenges that I've had trying to implement Jump in school, because I'm sure if you've had kids that have attended TDSB, or you're a teacher with TDSB, or you know about the TDSB, it has not been well received in the past. And thankfully this is beginning to change. But for some reason, even despite it being evidence-based and based on cognitive science, it has not been well received in the TDSB. It has been a fight to get it into the board. And thanks to Ken and John, I know that is starting to shift now, and there's a pilot project happening in the TDSB. And I can't wait to see the results from that pilot project, because I hope that becomes a selling point so that we can start to use it more wide range within the board. It's a fantastic program, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. If there are any questions from here or online?